2018 Kawasaki Vulcan VN1700. Last video I showed you how to take the fairing off. This video I'm going to show you how to put it back together. Got sidetracked on a couple other videos since I had it apart on how to add LED switches, add a USB port, a couple other things. So check out the other videos if you want to add some stuff while you're under here. First thing we want to do is get our lights put back on. If you watched the video on how to take the fairing off, this tab here, this is the one I was telling you on the back of the headlight that just pulls off. If you're not careful, what you'll end up doing is you'll open up the plastic and you'll rip the wires out of the back of there, and then you've got a problem because you have to rewire your harness. So when you do the headlight, make sure you're grabbing a hold of the sides of it, and you've got to kind of wiggle it and pull it backwards at the same time while you're holding the fairing. On the side lights, the little tab I was telling you about is right here. You've got to press this tab right here. When you're pressing that tab, it releases the light pops off. Pull down, press tab, pull down. Here are my parts needed. I separated my left and right side. The tools needed to put it back together. Again, I like this little sorting tray. It kind of helps me keep the nuts and bolts all together. That way when you go to find them, you know what you've got. If nothing else, you've got the same type of bolt and you'll know how many you need to put things back together with. Okay, when putting the fairing on, you've got to maneuver it so it fits in over top of the headlight or the turn signals. You've got to kind of go up, in, and down at an angle, and it'll drop right in place. Sit right on top of your turn signals. Again, be careful it doesn't fall right back out of the hole on you. 2 people for this job is a whole lot easier than 1. Now I've got to reach behind it and hook up my wires. Now the headlight's going to be one of the tougher ones because it's the shortest lead. I've kind of got a light shoved in there so you can see what's going on. You can reach up from the bottom of the motorcycle through the fairing and start this on there. To me, that's the easiest way. And if you got a small enough hand, if you press forward on the headlight, and again, just like you took it off, wiggle it back and forth and put it on there. That's how you get your front one on. The other two, here's the green lead, and you just push up and it locks in place. Repeat the same on the other side. The next thing we want to do is we want to put in the inserts right here where the tabs are into the rubber pieces. That's going to hold our fairing in place. Again, you can see the rubber insert, it's right in there. I'm going to take a little petroleum jelly and put it on there to help that pin pop in. It not only will help the pin pop in, but it'll help it come off in the future. Some people like to use soap or something like that, but the soap will actually dry and get sticky, makes it hard to come out. And when I'm talking about putting a little petroleum jelly on there, I mean a little. Don't slather it down. You don't want it falling out or falling loose. You just want enough to help that pin go in place without having to push really hard and bend or break something. The other thing you got to watch when you're putting it together, there's a tab right here. That fits into this groove right here. So when we slide it up in there, we're going to put our pin in, hook our tab in there, push the fairing up into place. Again, little petroleum jelly, not a lot, a little bit. Pull the fairing down, basically put that on there, and then when you go to put your front end together, the tab pushes in easily without having to push hard, without having to break anything. Other side, same finger, same amount of grease. Didn't even add any more grease to it. Just hitting the outside edge of it. Line it up. Next thing I want to do is put my 10mm bolts in the side here. Make sure my bushing is lined up properly. I'm just going to start all these bolts. I'm going to run them in by hand as far as they go. And then I'm going to come back and tighten them once I get everything started. That way all the plastic is lined up properly. So that's just hand tightened in there. My tab is caught. And same thing on this side. If you look in where the speaker is, you can see whether your bolt hole's lined up or not. Use the socket as a screwdriver basically. And again, I'm just going to hand tighten this to where it doesn't fall off and holds everything in place. Double check as you're going, make sure your tabs are caught, you're underneath of everything where you're supposed to be, and your rubber piece is in place. Next step, let's get our windscreen back on. Got the 5 bolts in my hand, 4mm T-handle. Take this, I'm going to push the front end up to where my hole's lined up. I'm going to start my middle screw. This comes in really handy if you've got 2 people with you. Just makes life easier holding the front end up so you can take the weight off of this. You don't end up turning anything or breaking anything. If your chrome spins down, you're really likely to scratch the front end of your motorcycle. So once I get in that, I've got my T-handle in my pocket. I'm not going to over tighten this, but I'm going to tighten it up enough to where everything stays in place so I can line up my other holes and get my other bolts started in there. So that's tight enough it won't fall off. I've got my other bolts. I'm just going to pop those in. Again, I'm not going to over tighten these or tighten them. I'm just running them in to where it'll hold everything in place. Once everything is in, then we'll tighten it up. In this case, I've got to move the windshield a little bit. I just kind of wiggled the bolt into place where I can see the hole. And again, tighten it down. In each one of these, I'm looking through the holes so I can actually see that I'm lined up correctly. If for some reason you're not lined up with one of the holes, if you take your T-handle, you can stick it in there and you can actually pull your fairing or whatever you're working on into place where your hole's lined up properly. That's what I did there. I was hanging down a little bit on this side. Again, the one person makes this a little bit more difficult, but not impossible. So I've got all those in there. Again, they're not tight yet, they're snug, but as you can see, the windshield is already in place. It's not going to go anywhere. We're going to put the bottom bolt in next. Back to this guy again. Just take my screwdriver or my socket with the extension of the screwdriver. And if you put the rest of the bolts in the order we did, that should just line right up and go in. Again, hand tight, leave it alone. We're going to go back and retighten all these up in just a few minutes once we get everything else started. Alright, these are the 2 that are on the bottom of the fairing, right by the crash bar. Same thing, everything should go right in place if everything's aligned up properly. This is our tough one, and these look like that in case you get your bolts mixed up. And again, for some people it may be easier for you to pull that crash bar off of there. It's a little more tough to work around, but again, I just don't like taking off anything that I don't have to take off. And run that in to where it stops. Alright, off to the other side. Same thing on this side. Bolt didn't exactly go in place, so I just kind of pulled the fairing a little bit left and right, and now I felt it drop up in there. This is also a little more difficult when you're trying to keep out of the camera angle too. Alright, since that's the last of our fairing bolts, we've got our windshield bolts put in, our front bolt put in the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and snug these up now. I keep repeating this, but it is important. We are dealing with plastic here, so do not crank it down to the point where you break something. Other side, same thing. I'm going to snug these up a little bit. Once I get them to where I want them, a little extra, and done. Go back in about a week if you want to. Double check it and make sure that you're still snug. Once you get it there, just again a little bit extra. There's my front bolt. A little snug. Right up to our windscreen. I like to start in the middle, work my way outward. These are the same as any other bolt. I'm going to take it, point where I think it's snug, and just a couple fingers a little bit extra. I'll do center first, and I'm going to work my way outward on the windshield. It's almost like doing a tire. You want to spread the weight out evenly as you go outward. You don't want to force anything to the middle and create a bow or a crack. Snug. Snug, and then I'm going to go across them one more time. With it extra. About a quarter turn on each bolt. Finish them off. Back up here to our speakers. Same thing, as soon as I feel like getting snug, a little bit extra, done. Don't over tighten it. While we're still working up top, our speaker goes in place. You can turn your handlebars whichever way you need to get into them. This is just better for the camera angle, not necessarily better for me to tighten them up. Snugging it up. And that's it. Do not over tighten them. Do not break your plastic. Snug but not over tightened. Let's work on our lower end. We'll get the bottom back together. We'll do the same on the other side. We'll polish it up a little bit and go out and take it for a test ride. All right, first thing we need to do is get this fairing in position. You got to be careful, don't scratch it all to pieces. If you just kind of manipulate a little bit, it is really flexible. So if you bend down a little bit at the top, bend up a little at the bottom, you'll get it in there without actually scratching anything. You can bend it under your foot peg. Once you get it in there, we're going to put our 3 10mm bolts in there to hold it back in place. Okay, if you remember when we pulled these out, these are the ones with the little bushing on, keep you from crushing your plastic. I'm going to start with this top left bolt first, just helps me hold everything in place. Make sure when you're putting this up here, all these go behind these and not in front of them. It's easy to do that and then nothing lines up, so make sure it's behind the bolts. Everything should line up perfect. You should be able to take your fingers and just start the bolt in place where it's supposed to be. Same as before, I'm just going to take this like a little screwdriver. I'm going to run it into where it's just snugged up a little bit. I don't want to over tighten this one at all. Grab my next one. Take my next one, start it up in here. If you want to, some people this may work easier for, you can take your insert and you can actually pop the insert in there first. Whatever's easier for you to do. Start your bolt. You should be able to tighten these up by hand. It's not real easy to cross thread a coarse thread bolt, but you can. Okay, last one in the bottom here. Again, I don't think there's any right way of putting these on as far as order. I guess if you work for the Kawasaki manufacturer, you might tell me that I'm doing it wrong, but to me, as long as the 3 bolts get in easy, you didn't scratch anything, you've done good. So once I've got those in, I'm going to go ahead and take my ratchet and tighten these up because we don't need into that section anymore. Again, I'm not over tightening them, just snugging them up real good. I'll go back later and check them. Snug. And snug. So those are all in. Next piece are going to be our side inserts. We've got a bolt hole low, bolt hole high, again 10mm. Now don't forget the rubber is for the next piece we're going to put on there. Also, this little tab here needs to go behind that little tab there. That way it fits on the outside really well. Our black bolts. In there. In there. And tighten. I'm just going to snug them up. Next step is to pop on the little plastic insert that covers up the top. Again, back to the rubber grommets. Personally, a little bit of Vaseline. You want to use a petroleum jelly and not like a KY jelly because it's going to dry up. If you use soap, it's going to dry up. So either don't put anything on there at all, or use something like a grease that's going to actually stay where it's going to keep lubricating, and it's not going to dry out your bushings either. 2 little plastic tabs. Again, don't slather it on, and somebody out there will tell me probably, or you, if you put that in, it's going to cause them to vibrate out or pop out. But once we put the tabs in place, it's not going to fall out. So we got that in place. We're going to take our inserts. The body inserts, if you've never put them back in before, if you just take and push the plastic piece back up, it's going to look like a little rivet. I'm going to push so I can see the plastic is in, lined up properly. Push it all the way up into the hole before you push down the plastic tab. Once you get it in the hole all the way, push the plastic tab down and it locks in place. Same thing up top here. Take our 2 tabs, line up the body work. You'll be able to see the hole inside there, so you'll know whether you're in the right place or not. Push it down, squeeze it together, and pop the tab in. Let's go do the other side. Alright, same situation here. We're going to have to fit this piece in. I'm going to turn the wheel where it's actually facing the other way. That'll move my fender further away. Gives me a little bit more room here. And this one's a little bit tougher since you're going around the master cylinder and stuff like that for the rear brakes. But it still goes in there just fine. I kind of fold it down and in. And again, your plastic is pretty flexible. You can break it, but you've got to really go out of your way to flex it enough to break it. Once I get it dropped in there, I'm going to line up all my bolts, put my bolts in, and we'll be good to go. So just watch me do the other side. I'm not going to torture you with all the details again, but same thing. Start your bolts, get them in there, snug them up. Once you have everything snugged in place, then go back and tighten them. Side body piece. Again, this tab here needs to go in behind that. That way it fits in place. And then our 2 10mm bolts, which are the black ones. Last step, putting our insert back in. And not going crazy here, just enough to help it slide in. And if I ever want to take it back out, to get it back out. That way it doesn't dry in place and stay there forever. Or you don't break your tabs off. Take your 2 pins, line them up first. Then your body pins, pop those in place. I think I mentioned before, if you get on eBay, bikebandit.com, if you ever break these body pins, if you go to AutoZone or Advanced, you can get things that look like this, or more for cars. They're all 1/4" body pins. They're just not going to look the same. So like in my case, I broke one of these months ago. Just been too lazy to change it out. But any 1/4" body pin will hold that in place. In the meantime, you can get the ones with little screws, whatever works. Or again, bikebandit.com or eBay, and get the right pins. So here you have it, the 2018 Kawasaki Vulcan Voyager VN1700. fairing reinstalled. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.